What if Ozzy Osbourne's final show wasn't just a farewell, but a choice he knew might cost him his life? When he rolled onto that stage in Birmingham for the Back to the Beginning concert, it felt like a victory lap. The original members of Black Sabbath were together again. The crowd was electric. Decades of heavy metal history were sitting in one place. Ozzy, seated on a dark throne at center stage, looked fragile, but the moment felt powerful. Fans saw a legend taking one last bow, but almost no one in that stadium knew what had been said behind closed doors just weeks earlier. They didn't know about the warning, they didn't know about the risk, and they definitely didn't know that this performance might have been more than symbolic. Because backstage, this wasn't just a concert, it was a decision. By that point, Ozzy's body had already endured more than most artists could imagine surviving. Parkinson's had steadily limited his mobility. Multiple spinal surgeries left him in constant pain. Touring was officially over in 2023, and even standing for long periods had become a challenge. The days of running across massive stages were gone, but the fire to perform never disappeared. Retirement didn't sit well with him. Being away from the stage felt unnatural. Music wasn't just a career. It was identity, survival, purpose. Every time someone suggested slowing down permanently, he pushed back. He wasn't ready to be remembered in the past tense. That's why the Birmingham show meant so much. It wasn't just another gig, it was home. It was Black Sabbath. It was the place where everything started. And that's when things took a turn no one expected. Just when the farewell plans were coming together, everything nearly collapsed. Months before the show, Ozzy was hit with a severe infection that turned into a medical emergency. He was hospitalized. The situation was serious enough that doctors weren't making promises. Recovery at his age, with his condition, wasn't guaranteed. Then came the moment that changed everything. 2 weeks before he was set to walk, or be helped onto that stage, doctors gave the family a blunt warning. Performing could end his life. The physical strain, the stress, the adrenaline, it was all too much. They advised him not to do it. For most people, that would have been the end of the conversation. For Ozzy, it was the beginning of a decision that stunned everyone around him. Ozzy didn't argue with the doctors. He simply made his choice. If his time was limited, he wasn't going to spend it sitting quietly at home. He reportedly told them he was doing the show no matter what, because whether it was weeks or months, the outcome wouldn't change. What mattered was how he went out. For him, the stage wasn't a risk. It was where he felt most alive. Sharon was left carrying the emotional weight of that decision. She understood exactly what could happen, but she also knew this wasn't about logic anymore. It was about dignity, about control, about a man who had survived chaos, addiction, scandals, surgeries, and headlines for decades, refusing to let the end write him out softly. And once that decision was locked in, there was no turning back. The night of the concert didn't feel fragile. It felt historic. As Ozzy emerged and took his place on that throne at center stage, the stadium erupted in a way that almost drowned out the music. There was something different in the air, something heavier than nostalgia. This wasn't just another reunion. It felt final. Every movement was slower, more deliberate. Every word he sang carried weight. His voice wasn't the reckless roar of the 70s, but it didn't need to be. It sounded lived in, earned, real. Sitting there, surrounded by the original members of Black Sabbath, he looked less like a patient fighting illness and more like a king holding court one last time. The throne wasn't a symbol of weakness. It became a statement. He wasn't standing because he physically couldn't, but he also didn't have to. The power was still there. The presence was undeniable. When he looked out into the crowd, you could see it register. Tens of thousands of fans who had grown up with him, aged with him, and stuck by him through every chaotic headline. There were moments during the set where he paused, almost as if he was taking it all in. Not dramatically, not theatrically, just quietly. And in hindsight, those pauses feel different. They feel intentional, like someone memorizing a final chapter while still inside it. The audience thought they were witnessing a farewell performance. What they were actually witnessing may have been something far more personal, a man fulfilling a promise to himself. The energy never dipped. If anything, it intensified. The crowd sang louder, the band played harder. It felt less like a goodbye and more like a celebration of survival. For decades, Ozzy had defied expectations. He had survived moments that should have ended everything. And here he was again, defying medical advice, defying odds, refusing to disappear quietly. But as powerful as that night felt, the clock was already ticking. 17 days later, Ozzy Osbourne was gone. The news hit differently because of what had just happened. That Birmingham show instantly transformed from a historic reunion into something far more profound. It wasn't just his final performance, it became his chosen farewell. When fans replayed the footage, the details felt heavier. The pauses, the way he looked out at the crowd, the quiet intensity in his voice. It no longer felt felt like nostalgia. It felt intentional. And when Sharon finally revealed that doctors had warned him the performance could cost him everything, it reframed the entire night. This wasn't denial, it wasn't recklessness, it was acceptance. He understood the risk and stepped into it anyway. For Ozzy, fading away behind closed doors was never an option. If the end was approaching, he would meet it the only way he knew how. On stage, surrounded by his band, his family, and the fans who built his legacy. In the end, that concert wasn't just a goodbye to the audience. It was Ozzy deciding how his story would close. Not quietly, not cautiously, but exactly the way he lived. Loud, fearless, and completely on his own terms. And that's what makes this confession from Sharon so powerful. For months, the public saw that concert as a triumphant farewell, a legend closing the curtain. But now, knowing he had been warned, knowing he walked onto that stage fully aware of the risk, it feels like something else entirely. It feels like a final act of control in a life that had often spiraled beyond it. Ozzy wasn't just performing songs, he was finishing his story the way he wanted it told. Sharon's revelation didn't just expose a medical warning, it revealed the mindset of a man who refused to let illness define his ending. After decades of chaos, headlines, and surviving things that would have broken most people, he chose clarity in his final chapter. No drama, no pity, just one last night in front of the world. And maybe that's why the moment lingers. Because in the end, Ozzy Osbourne didn't just give fans a final show. He gave them a farewell that now feels deliberate, fearless, and deeply personal. The kind of ending you don't fully understand until it's already over. Looking back now, that final night in Birmingham feels almost cinematic. But it wasn't scripted. It was a man staring down the inevitable and deciding he would meet it standing tall, even if he had to do it seated on a throne. Ozzy Osbourne spent his entire career shocking the world, surviving chaos and rewriting the rules. Critics counted him out more times than anyone can remember. Health scares, career collapses, public meltdowns, yet somehow he always came back. This time was different. This time, there was no comeback planned, and maybe that's what makes it so powerful. He didn't wait for the end to make the decision for him. He didn't let hospital walls define his final image. Instead, he chose the roar of a stadium, the sound of his band, the voices of fans singing every word back to him. That wasn't coincidence, it was intention. Sharon's confession doesn't just add emotion to the story, it changes the meaning of it. That concert wasn't just historic because of who was on stage, it was historic because of what it represented. A farewell delivered exactly the way he wanted. In the end, Ozzy didn't just exit the spotlight, he commanded it one last time. And that's a legacy no warning could ever silence. When the lights went down in Birmingham, fans believed they had witnessed the end of an era. What they didn't realize was that Ozzy Osbourne may have already known it was the end of his own. Sharon's revelation changes everything. That final show wasn't just a nostalgic reunion or a carefully planned goodbye tour stop. It was a calculated risk, a personal decision. A man choosing the terms of his final chapter instead of letting circumstances choose for him. And that's what makes it unforgettable. Ozzy didn't slip away quietly. He didn't fade behind closed doors. He walked into the spotlight one last time, fully aware of what it could cost him, and delivered a farewell that now feels almost poetic, defiant, intentional, unmistakably him. Long after the headlines fade, that image remains. Ozzy on his throne, facing the crowd, taking it all in. Not just performing, but saying goodbye his way.